Sometimes things just aren't working out under center.
Tom Brady's about to be a free agent. Tom Brady's going to Las Vegas next year.
Every team needs to be able to recognize when it's time to move on from your quarterback and try something a little different. So today, let's take a look at 10 teams that absolutely need a new quarterback and who they should get. Let's start with the New York Jets. They're one of the most exciting young teams around the league during the first half of the 2022 season. They started off 5-2 on the backs of rookie studs like Sauce Gardner and Breece Hall. But as time wore on, their deficiency at the quarterback position became way too much for the Jets to overcome. Zach Wilson, who New York took second overall in the draft back in 2021, struggled mightily on a team that really only needed the bare minimum from its signal caller to win games. Yet Wilson was so bad in year 2 that he was benched 2 separate times and a healthy scratch for multiple games. Although the Jets have been outspoken that Wilson will remain with the team throughout the rest of his contract, they have made no commitment to actually playing him. As far as I'm concerned, this is largely lip service so they don't further tank his potential trade value. Either way, the Jets need to go out and bring in someone new. And who better than former league MVP Lamar Jackson? The dual threat quarterback seems to have been at odds with the Ravens organization all year regarding his contract situation. And New York may be able to work out a trade that would entice Baltimore to deal him. After all, it seems pretty clear that the Ravens are hesitant to commit to Lamar long-term at the price that he wants. Maybe they will sell high and try to retool at the position through the draft. Now, the Jets aren't the only team that need to move on from their quarterback that they drafted. I mean, hey, how about the Tennessee Titans? My lord, does it look like Malik Willis is not fit to play quarterback at the NFL level. And considering an aging Ryan Tannehill is their other option, it seems like it's high time for them to make a move. Considering some of the pieces that Tennessee has, like, I don't know, Derrick Henry, they really don't need much. They just need someone that can actually throw downfield a little bit and protect the football. And though he isn't perfect, this could be a great opportunity for Jimmy Garoppolo, who may be in need of a new home next season. And he has a loose connection to Titans coach Mike Vrabel, dating back to his days with the Patriots. And I mean, I'm sure Jimmy would be more than happy to make Nashville his new home. To me, this one just makes too much sense. While we're talking about Patriot connections, let's venture out to Sin City, where Raiders head coach Josh McDaniels is evaluating his options at quarterback in year 2. This one has been tossed around for a couple years now, but with all his marital woes, who's to say that Tom Brady doesn't throw caution to the wind and move out to Vegas, and maybe reunite with his former offensive coordinator? Brady and McDaniels worked together in New England for 13 freaking years. Not to mention the offensive weapons that Brady would have at his disposal. Guys like Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and Darren Waller. Heck, throw in Hunter Renfrow in the slot and you have a similar setup to what the duo worked with in New England. And from the Raiders' perspective, now that they're clearly moving on from Derek Carr, they would be crazy not to roll the dice on Brady in the twilight of his career. He hasn't been great this season, but he's still the GOAT, and that Bucs team was mighty flawed. Speaking of the Bucs, they also may find themselves in need of a new quarterback. You know, assuming Brady is on his way out. It might actually make sense for them to try and mend the fences with their former first overall pick, Jameis Winston. The 29-year-old QB can definitely still sling the ball, and the hope would be that he could dial back the mistakes, which there have been some signs of during his limited action in New Orleans. After all, it isn't like his time there was a complete disaster. During his last season in Tampa, Jameis led the league in passing, going for over 5,000 yards. The only issue was, along with his 5,109 yards and 33 touchdowns, he surrendered 30 interceptions. And the team finished 7-9, which means they were competitive. So perhaps the Bucs will remain with Winston and try to skip a full rebuild following a potential Tom Brady departure. Winston's current team, the New Orleans Saints, are likely going to be making a play at the quarterback position as well this offseason, despite the merits of Jameis Winston that we just outlined. There's been a troubling shroud of mystery around the way New Orleans has handled Winston's 4 cracked vertebrae. The rumors have started to circulate that there might be a lawsuit coming down the pipe, because management either allowed or maybe even pressured Winston to play after learning about the severity of his back. Either way, Winston has become a bit of a pariah in the Saints organization, as we've seen with Dennis Allen's refusal to unseat Andy Dalton from the starting spot thoroughly throughout the entire of the 2022 season, despite his unrelenting mediocrity. if you even want to call it that. I wouldn't be too shocked to see Allen try and lure Derek Carr to the Big Easy. I mean, after all, he was the one who first drafted Carr in Oakland. Before he was fired after just 4 games. Maybe he looks for a shot at redemption and a second shot with the guy he clearly saw potential in when he took him in the top of the 2nd round, long before he turned into a Pro Bowler at the NFL level. While we're talking about teams that are borderline addicted to rolling the dice on veteran quarterbacks, how about we talk about the Indianapolis Colts and the Carolina Panthers? These two teams have tried with an admirable but embarrassingly ineffective dedication to finding a veteran quarterback to slot in under center in lieu of building through the draft. Interestingly, both these teams went from having their guy at quarterback to desperado seemingly overnight. He battled injuries, but Andrew Luck was a legit franchise quarterback when healthy. And after he stunned the organization by retiring just before the 2019 season, it has been a rotating cast of characters for the Colts. From Jacoby Brissett and Brian Hoyer to Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz. And of course, most recently, the three-headed monster that is Matt Ryan, Sam Ehlinger, and Nick Foles. After this horribly disappointing season, the Colts need to put their pride or perhaps their fear of getting hurt again aside and draft a QB at the top of the draft. Sitting at number 4 with Arizona and Chicago, two teams that are very unlikely to draft a quarterback ahead of them, Indy is in a pretty good spot as is. I'd love to see them take a shot at getting CJ Stroud, the former Ohio State signal caller. Let me tell you, Stroud is a freak athlete. And after watching the way he made plays against the Georgia defense during the college football playoffs, the prospect of him pairing with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield and having Michael Pittman as a target downfield has to be appealing to the Colts front office and coaching staff. Regardless of whether it takes trading up or not, the Colts brass need to do whatever they can to bring Stroud to town. So that way, they can at least restore some of the honor to the quarterback position in Indy. Carolina, on the other hand, should have its sights set on Will Levis as the long overdue replacement for Cam Newton. Ever since the Panthers' former MVP started deteriorating back in 2019, Carolina has really struggled to find a viable long-term replacement for Newton. I mean, it got so bad that they desperately resorted to reacquiring Cam in 2021, despite him clearly being long past his prime. And when you factor in some of the other epic flops they've brought in at QB in recent years, it seems pretty clear that Carolina needs to suck it up and look to the draft. Just think about how poorly the Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield experiments went. If that doesn't scare the Carolina decision makers into drafting Will Levis, I don't know what will. Sitting at 9, this may be easier said than done. But just like Indy, Carolina needs to do whatever it can to get their guy at the quarterback position through this year's draft. To be honest with y'all, the situation isn't much better in Houston or Washington, two other franchises that have found themselves in quarterback purgatory. Starting off with the former, the Texans, who hold the 2nd pick in this year's draft. They need to find a better solution than freaking Davis Mills. He has won just 5 games in 2 seasons, and he is clearly not the guy. I want to like the guy, because you know what? He really seems like he gives it his all out there. But man, does he just stink. Houston isn't exactly the kind of franchise that's positioned to lure a veteran worth his weight into town via free agency. So the Texans would be wise to use their top 2 pick, which very easily could have been the number 1 overall pick if not for a rogue Lovie Smith, to bring in the best quarterback prospect they can. How about someone like Alabama's standout Bryce Young, who has the potential to put an entire organization on his back with his insane dual threat skills? Young could be a complete game changer for the Texans. Kind of like the same way that Lamar Jackson was for the Baltimore Ravens. Washington, who has labored through the likes of Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, and co. since the flash of brilliance that was the RG3 experience in DC, should have its sights set on a new, wildly athletic quarterback of their own. I'm talking about the former University of Florida QB, Anthony Richardson. Richardson is a little rawer than some of the other young names on this list, but he more than makes up for it with his athleticism. Calling him a freak is almost underselling it. I mean, Richardson is borderline a mutant. What is this wizardry? Hopefully, Washington can learn from the past mistakes it made handling Robert Griffin. And maybe they can create an opportunity for Richardson to excel long-term in the nation's capital. Last but not least, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Arthur Smith and his staff are clearly ready to move on from Marcus Mariota. And, let's face it, they haven't really been given all that much of a reason to put the fate of their offense in the hands of Desmond Ridder. So maybe they get bold and try to roll the dice on Trey Lance. Because if the Niners are going on the playoff run that everyone thinks they will, and Purdy continues to deliver the goods, you'd have to think that they'll stick with the former Mr. Irrelevant. The Iowa State product has looked legit so far, and if Shanahan decides that he's all they need in their run-heavy explosive offensive system, then Lance, who they traded up to acquire 2 years ago, might actually be available before ever really having a chance to take over as the starter. He's looked solid in his 4 starts, but Lance hasn't been able to stay healthy, and at this point, it might just make sense for the two sides to go their separate ways, which would open the door for Atlanta to bring Lance into town to compete with Ritter. But which NFL team do you think needs a new quarterback the most? And who should they bring in? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.